Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. When I look up at the stars at night, I sometimes wonder if we are the only ones out there. I've been asking myself this question my whole life. I want to believe, but I don't trust anyone tonight. Here are 3 stories about people who say they saw aliens. So enjoy, but don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon. Officer Miles Bradbury wrote the following in his notebook on April 17, 2013. We were asked to check out a fire in the woods. When we got there, we saw government agents, who told us to set up a perimeter and gave us false information so that anyone who tried to get close would be angry. Jake, a close friend of mine, and I were both a little upset by this. We talked to pass the long, boring hours. During the talk, it didn't take long for the government agents to show up. So, what do you think they are doing? I asked. To test weapons. I bet it's not a test of a weapon. It would be like smoking. But why do that in the middle of the woods? So what? Or more, or somewhere safe at sea. You are correct. It doesn't make much sense to test weapons. If they let me, I might go take a look. After that, my friend stopped talking. I wish I could have seen what was going through his mind. If I had seen him the next day, when he wasn't at his post, I might have tried to stop him. So I stood alone during my lunch break for the whole morning shift. He came up to me. He was unique. It wasn't just that he was dirty and had slime all over his clothes and face. Not just the fact that he was tired or that he was shaking. It was the way he looked at her. I've never seen anything like it. The only way I could describe it was that he looked crazy. There was a constant battle between his desperate need to do something and his crippling fear of actually doing it. He said the words in between short gasps of air. It's not human. If he hadn't looked like that, I would have laughed. I didn't start this because it was funny. You mean like little gray men? He gave a head shake. No, not at all. These were bigger than us, not in size, but in some other way. More effective. We are like ants next to it. People are either nothing or everything. He began to cry, laugh, and shake. I moved slowly away. I'll never forget what came next. He grabbed my package out of the mug on the table, dumped the contents on the floor, broke the mug against the table, and shoved the broken pieces down his throat. I ran up and tried to stop him, but it was already too late. He was gushing with blood. He grabbed my hand so hard it hurt, and he didn't let go until he was dead from choking on his own blood. For the next 20 minutes, I didn't move. Even so, the rest of the group found us. I was thought to have killed him. I was, of course. When government people saw the slime on his clothes, they wanted to convict me even more. I was sure I would find out what was going on. I didn't think I would be able to sleep again until they put me in a spare room, and told a guard not to let me do anything. He told me in private that he didn't think I was responsible. I tried very hard to use this to my advantage when enough time had passed and he started to get lazy. I got up and beat him until he was either unconscious or dead. I don't really know. I didn't even think about it long enough to feel guilty or sorry about what I did. No matter what, I had to get to the smoke. After walking for a few minutes, I started to feel vulnerable, and not just because I could get caught by my fellow police officers or the government. I felt like a million eyes were looking at me with the intent to kill me. I felt like every air molecule around me was a dangerous predator that ate people. The words of my dead co-worker came back to me. I felt like I was an ant looking up at a person's boot. The feeling kept getting worse. As I got closer to the smoke, my chest hurt, my spine pinged, and my forehead burned. So many bad things happened to me because of my anxiety. I felt like I was walking through a desert. To calm down, I had to breathe slowly and deeply, but it wasn't enough. Every step I took was hard. I had to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. I finally got to the clearing where the smoke was coming from and saw what was making it. When you see UFOs on TV, they look like discs, triangles, or flashing lights, all of which you've seen before. What was in front of me? I knew for sure that it was a UFO. Even though I had never seen anything like it before, it was a craft that humans could never make. I didn't know much about science, but I knew this ship could go faster than the speed of light. I realized that everything we think we know about physics is wrong just by looking at it. I couldn't keep going. I turned around and sat down in the forest. I wrote this at that time. I wanted to find out what killed my friend. But if any of you in the government find this notebook, don't tell anyone. I don't want this to be read by anyone else. Don't tell me the truth. We're leaving. Humanity is not ready for this, and after I'm done writing this, it never will be. I'm going to look inside the UFO as soon as I get up the courage. The following passages, which come from Drive. Miles Bradbury is not a very strange person, even though he always talks about seeing an alien. When he gets more specific, things start to get more interesting. Most of the time, he just rambles and stamps his feet during the interview, but when he talks about the alien, he says it is beautiful, perfect, gigantic, but not in size, and other similar things. He also says it is a higher form of life than humans and could easily destroy us if it needed to. In fact, during a few interviews, he stopped here and kept yelling, "Humanity is nothing," until we gave him something to calm him down. He has no history of episodes or disorders, and there are no signs of brain damage or physical injury. All of this happened because he had some kind of mental trauma the night before he was taken in after killing 2 other officers. This person has almost no chance of getting better. It's a problem. This condition seems to have no clear cause. I can't think of a single reason on earth why a man would lose his temper so badly. In 2009, my dad and I went to a carnival in our area just for fun. I played that game where you throw darts at balloons as the last thing I did there. If you've ever been to a fair or carnival, you know exactly what I mean. Anyway, I played that game and got an alien doll as the small prize. The first time I got it, I was crazy about the doll for some reason. But now, fear has taken the place of love, as you will see later. So we took the alien doll that was lime green back to my house. I put it on one of my closet's knobs and didn't touch it for 3 years. It wasn't doing anything. For 3 years, it was in the exact same position. I had forgotten about it until recently. Now that I'm in 8th grade, I'm not as active as I was when I was in 6th grade. In a few months, I'll be going to high school. Just got out of elementary school and is always busy with things like computer games, the internet, anime, and American animation. I just sit at my computer all day, every day. I only get up and walk around a few times a day to go to the bathroom, get a soda, eat something, or go to sleep. Even though my stepmother was sometimes annoying, everything else in my world was fine. I thought this was the case. I've been having these scary and very, very strange dreams for the past few months. I've gotten ones with creepy characters from popular TV shows looking for me, satanic messages, the general feeling of being alone and helpless in a dangerous place, and so on. In my most recent dream, I decided to stay up all night like kids next door and watch old Cartoon Network shows. Around midnight, Ed and Eddie went to Dexter's lab. The VHS player I was using to watch them started to make the images look very distorted. The red tint and missing animations made it look like one character was killing another. It got to the point where I felt uncomfortable, so I turned off the TV and went back upstairs to sleep. When I turned off the TV, though, instead of turning off, it would show a black and white still image of a certain character from one of the shows I was watching, with no pupils in their eyes and no mouth, staring right at me. I tried over and over to turn the TV off. Each try brought up a different image until, for some reason, it started showing a clear video of a palm tree with a face talking in a distorted voice that sounded like instructions on how to hang yourself. At that point, I started laughing so hard that I had to run up the stairs. That's what happened when I woke up at 3 a.m. The first thing I see when I open my closet door is that doll that looks like an alien. This is how my weird dreams went every night. I have the dream, and then I wake up at a ridiculously early hour, and the alien-shaped doll is the first thing I see. This only happens on nights when I didn't put my computer chair in a way that blocked the doll. So I'm starting to think it has something to do with these dreams, like it's sending them to my mind through some kind of channel. I'm going to try out a few things to see if my theory is right. If it is, I'll destroy it because these dreams are keeping me up at night and making me very stressed. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm being watched while I'm typing this, even though no one else is in the room. May 6, 2012. I tried to put the doll in a drawer last night before I went to bed. Then, I put the computer chair where I could see the doll if it was still on top of the closet. So far, I haven't had any lucid dreams, so my guess is right. All of this started when my family went to Las Vegas. The year was 2009, and for my 20th birthday, we decided to take a short trip. Now that I think about it, my parents could have waited a year and taken me to Las Vegas on my 21st birthday. Going to Las Vegas at 20 is like going to an amusement park when you're too short to ride any of the good roller coasters. I don't have a sibling. So, my mother, father, and I would be the only people living in Southern California. We decided to drive there in our minivan instead of flying, both to save money and to avoid the Los Angeles International Airport, which is a terrifying place. Anyone who has driven that way before knows that there isn't much to see, just a lot of desert and hot asphalt. We stopped in the small town of Baker, California, for some food at a Del Taco, which the FDA gave a grade of C, some gas that was way too expensive, and a look at the world's biggest thermometer. It was 108 degrees Fahrenheit that day, which is pretty normal for early summer in the town because it is so close to Death Valley. On the road trip, my dad and I mostly made Simpsons jokes and references that my mom didn't get, and my parents mostly talked to each other about family stuff that I didn't care much about. I had an old Game Boy with me at the time, so I wasn't totally bored while my parents talked. It took us about 6.5 hours to drive from our house to Las Vegas. We found our hotel when we got to the Strip. We stayed at Circus, which wasn't the most luxurious hotel on the Strip, but I didn't have any problems with it. We had a nice little 4-day, 3-night trip to Las Vegas, where we did all the usual things. But I'm not here to talk about that. We were on our 3rd day of vacation, and we didn't have much planned for that day. At first, we were just going to walk around the Strip, and see if anything interesting caught our eye. But that day, my mom had a migraine. So, while she rested, my dad and I decided to leave the city on our own. We were both very interested in UFOs, and we already knew that the legendary secret base called Area 51 was about 85 miles north of Las Vegas. So we decided to have a little adventure and head north on Nevada Highway 375, which is also known as the extraterrestrial highway. We just want to look around for a bit and then take some photos at the base's edge. The idea of a legendary secret makes me laugh. By the way, we knew there wasn't much to see besides the signs that said this was government property and that if you tried to trespass, they could shoot you on the spot. But we thought that the Alone would be a good place to take pictures and that it would be cool to be able to say, "Hey, I've been to Area 51. So we drove around for about an hour and a half and didn't see a single car, which was a little unnerving. Unexpected. We got as close as we could to the base, got out of the car, and saw that everything was just as we thought it would be. There was a dirt road that had those signs in a locked gate blocking it off. Strangely, there were no fences or walls around the forbidden areas, so people could get in. Just these orange flags sticking up from the ground to show where the territory is. I guess they think that since no one has the guts to go in there, there's no point in putting up a fence. We could see all the tools they had to spot people like us who wanted to watch. There were strange things sticking out of the ground that I'm sure are used for things like detecting oncoming vehicles, thermal surveillance, and all kinds of video cameras. Before we knew it, two men with binoculars were watching us from inside a white truck that was sitting on top of a hill. I'm sure they were just there to make sure we didn't do anything stupid and to show us that this was a serious matter. I'm sure they see people like us out there all the time. We didn't do anything stupid, but I'm sure they do. We just took pictures of ourselves in front of the "We'll shoot on sight" sign, looked around for a bit, and then decided to go back because it was getting dark. The problem was that it shouldn't have been getting dark, and it was getting dark quickly, faster than it should have. It was around 3 p.m. when we got to the edge of the base. So we should have had at least 5 hours of light, but it felt like about 45 minutes since we got there. When my dad looked at his watch, he saw that it was, in fact, 3:43. The only thing that was wrong was that his watch had stopped. We talked briefly about this strange thing, but then we just got in the car and left. We got into the van, sat down, buckled our seat belts, and my dad turned the key in the ignition. The engines worked just fine. But none of the electronic parts of the car were working. We couldn't turn on the lights, the radio didn't work, and the face of the digital clock was blank. We were getting scared at this point. The car worked perfectly, but we didn't have any headlights, and the sun was quickly going down behind the mountains. The choice we made was to just drive as fast as we could. We could see as long as we could. If the police pulled us over, that would be the best thing that could happen because then we could get help getting a speeding ticket. Even a big one wouldn't be a big deal. We thought to try our cell phones, but they were completely dead, just like all the other electronics in the car. Let me give you a quick review of what's going on. My dad is now driving like a bat out of hell in a minivan down an empty highway at least 110 miles per hour. He is trying to get back to civilization before the sun goes down. We think it's about 3:55 p.m. At this point, my dad's full attention is on the road, but I'm starting to see things out the right side windows. I don't want to tell him because if he looked, he might flip the van and kill us both. I can't tell you what I saw, to be honest. There were bright streaks of light in different colors. They looked like fireworks, but instead of exploding, They seemed to collapse. Some very big flashing lights that were swaying back and forth in the sky, and other things that I just can't describe with words. There was no doubt that these were unidentified flying objects, but I don't think they were anything like an alien spaceship. At this point, another strange thing started to happen. The sun, which was quickly going down behind the mountains, stopped just below the horizon. It seemed odd. The mountains blocked the sun completely, but we could still see it shining behind them. We were in a strange kind of twilight that would never end. It was good for us because, at least in this situation, we could see where we were going and keep going until we got back to the city and could put this crazy mess behind us. Another thing that made me feel better was that the strange lights I had seen before had gone away. Our newfound hope didn't last long, though. We've been going twice as fast as the speed limit for more than an hour now, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere. At this speed, we should have seen at least some buildings or other cars. Now that I think about it, at this speed, we should have already reached Las Vegas. All we could see was the same deserted road with an eerie orange tint that we had been looking at the whole time. There were no familiar landmarks to help us figure out where we were. We couldn't have taken a wrong turn or something else like that earlier. The whole journey went in a straight line. We both knew that something was very wrong. We just kept going down this road that seemed to go on forever, with no real sense of time, until we finally saw something different far away. Both lanes of the road were blocked by something big. As we got closer, we saw that the problem was a bunch of big cars parked sideways. It looked like there was a military blockade. As we got closer, there were two big Humvees in a single trooper carrier with a canopy on top. My dad started to slow down as we got closer, and the men at each post started to shine. The tops of the vehicles are shining very bright lights in our direction. Then, through a loudspeaker, we heard a loud, deep voice. "Stop driving and put your hands where I can see them." We obliged. Of course, when my dad turned off the car, we both put our hands out the windows. It was at that point that we started seeing the soldiers. They seemed to be wearing normal military uniforms, though with bright lights it was hard to tell because they were heavily silhouetted. One thing I did find strange was that they were all wearing gas masks. Something didn't seem right about this. Nothing made sense about this whole thing. Why would they be blocking off the road? Going away from the base? Why did it look like the sun was frozen just above the horizon? What did those lights mean? I had been seen. I saw 6 soldiers who were all different sizes and heights. As expected, they all seemed to be carrying standard M4 assault rifles. But there was just something about them that seemed off that point, accentuated by the gas masks. One soldier came up to us on each side of the car. There was a soldier at each of our windows, and the one on my father's side asked in a stern, slightly distorted voice, "What's the point of you being here?" My dad answered with some worry, All we want to do is get back to our hotel." The soldier replied in a voice that was even deeper and more messed up. "Hotel? I don't know of any hotels in this area." At this point, I started to feel weird, and both time and space seemed to be warped. When I looked at the soldier on my side of the car, I saw that he was fully covered. I looked him right in the eye, and all of a sudden, thousands of images came into my mind at once, making my inner ears go crazy. I'd never been through anything so strong and overwhelming before, and I doubt I ever will again. I tried with all my strength to stay awake, but I couldn't do it for long. The next thing I knew, it was early morning. The next day, the sun had apparently set and risen as it always does, and both my father and I woke up together. We were still in the car, which was moving. But now, all of the electronics were working as they should. We were going down the street that leads to our hotel. It looks like my dad drove all the way back and doesn't remember it. He told me that he had a similar experience to mine and also lost consciousness around the same time I did. The car's clock radio said it was 6:18 in the morning. My dad looked at his analog clock to make sure, but it said 1:15, which was wrong by more than 5.5 hours, but it started ticking again. We couldn't find the right words to say to each other. We couldn't even begin to figure out what had happened that night. We got back to the hotel room, where my mom was sick with worry and neither of us knew where to start to tell her what had just happened. We told her that our car broke down on the highway in the end. So, we were stuck on the road all day waiting for help, but we forgot to charge our phones. So, it wasn't until early the next morning that a kind truck driver pulled over and helped us fix our car. She had every right to be very angry, and she was. But she thought what we said. Since we weren't sure ourselves, it didn't feel right to tell her what really happened. Even now, my dad and I don't talk about what happened that night. I'm not going to make any guesses about what happened. Maybe we should not have seen what we did. Maybe the desert sun just makes you think in strange ways. I'll leave you with one last piece of advice: if you go after the mysterious, you can only blame yourself if you find it. My name is Ray, and I live in the countryside of Oregon in a small town. Most of the men in town work as loggers, and most of the women work in stores, restaurants, or just stay at home with their kids. This is not meant to be sexist or anything. It's the way things are out here. Did I hurt you too much? Naya should send that nonsense back to Liberal. Anyway, my wife and I were driving down Highway 199 with our son last Friday night after we had eaten and seen a scary movie. I know what a cliché is. Anyway, we were just talking about the movie, and the radio wasn't off. It was on at a low enough volume that you could hear it but not really pay attention to it. Does that make sense? It's totally dark outside. I checked the dashboard and saw that it was 10:15 p.m. as we drive home. There aren't many street lights, and all of a sudden, the radio starts going crazy. Sounds like wind, creaking, and scratching are coming out of the car speakers in a crazy way. Was the car radio broken, or were they some kind of energy flashes from deep space, or maybe something similar from a satellite for FRBs, or fast radio bursts? RBS. So much noise. I turned the knob, but nothing happened. Then, all of a sudden, the car turned off completely, with no lights, no engine, and the brakes barely brought it to a stop on the road. So now we're being hit by some kind of radio frequency, and our car's battery has died. We're stuck in the middle of the road in the middle of the night, like sitting ducks. At this point, I'm breathing hard and trying to figure out what we should do next. Then, this very bright light is shining over our whole car in front of us, but it seems to be coming from above us at an angle, maybe 45 degrees, and pointing down at us. I covered my eyes and yelled for everyone else to do the same. The sounds in our radio are getting louder. I can't believe they still haven't blown. Everyone starts to scream as they try to cover their eyes and ears at the same time, and it hurts. It felt like forever. But in reality, it was probably only 30 seconds before the light went out, the car started back up, and the radio went back to normal. The person was so shocked that they were hyperventilating. I ask everyone if they are okay. They both nod, and when I looked at the time, I stopped in my tracks. It said it was 11:15 p.m. How dare you? What did you do an hour ago? Even with the noise and the car turning off, it hasn't been more than a few minutes. No way has an hour gone by. I asked my wife to look at her watch, and it was the same, 11:15. Whatever happened to us was not from this earth. We don't have the time to stop technology. Even if I was wrong about the time, it wasn't by an hour. I scratched my head in confusion, and then I scratched the back of my neck as I put the car in drive and started driving home. What are these two bumps on the back of my neck? I live in California, in Oceanside. My roommate Brandon and I live in an apartment not too far from Camp Pendleton, which is a Marine Corps base. There's always noise coming from that base. In town, we could hear and feel the bomb prototype crap that they were always dropping on that base. It can be annoying sometimes. Especially when you're trying to sleep at night. Anyway, this has been going on since last summer. I can't say what we saw and what I saw. Both of us saw it. On Saturday night, we were making a steak fried casserole dish that we kind of came up with together. I went outside to smoke a cigarette and was shocked by what I saw in the sky. I was looking north toward where the bases were when I saw two flickering lights that looked like goldish white. They were very big. Having an idea of how far they were from the base. At first, the lights were very big and didn't move. I thought fire wouldn't be too high up for that. I called Brandon over, and he freaked out and grabbed his dreadlocks tightly. Then, all of a sudden, they both moved to a new spot in the sky that was still in the same place. Whoa! What the heck is that? Then, out of nowhere, a third light appears near the other two. This light is twice as big as the other two and is dark red and shiny. Man, right now I'm really freaking out, I said to Brandon under my breath. After that, Brandon laughs. When he's upset or stressed, he does that. Something's going to happen. It's his fucking attitude that helps him stay positive when things aren't going well. I really should do it sometime. I bet they'll say something about military air balloons or something on the news. Brandon said, smiling. I bet that piece of crap isn't a balloon. I spoke up. I never heard anything about it on the radio or in the news. I don't know exactly what I saw, but I think I know what it was. It's probably the same thing they're doing in Nevada's Area 51. I might never find out the truth, but we know it's out there. So, if you're a hoo-ha Marine at Camp Pendleton and you saw this video, leave a comment below and let everyone know the truth. We would like to think that this happened to me last winter. I was in my room looking through my telescope out the window at the stars and planets. My bedroom is on the second floor, and my house in Juliet, Illinois, is a big, old Victorian house. During that season, there was a lot of snow, and my friends wanted to go out that night. I, on the other hand, hate the cold. So I just made up a reason to stay home and hang out in my room. I'm much more shy and quiet. Most of the time, I like to be by myself. I'm more interested in space and everything out there than anything on Earth. To be honest, I just don't like being around a lot of people. It was about 9 o'clock at night. I was using my scope to look at Mars when I thought I saw a shooting star flying across the sky. I tried to find it and figure out how to get there with my scope, and when I did, I was shocked by what I saw. It wasn't a shooting star, and it wasn't too far away, like planets and other stars are in galaxies far away. This thing was close, like it was in our sky and flying toward the ground. I jumped back from my telescope and gasped, blinked hard, rubbed my eyes in disbelief, and looked back at the object again. It was getting bigger, which meant it was getting closer to our atmosphere. I chose to call Junior, who is my best friend. After I told him everything, he loves alien stuff like I do, especially movies. He came over, and we watched it in my room together. Now, you can see the object even if you don't have a telescope. I think we're about to touch down. Beavis Jr. thought that was a good idea. I answered with a smile. I watched as the object suddenly crashed into the woods just outside my neighborhood. The ground shook like a little earthquake, but there was no fire, no flash, or anything else. We both ran to my closet, and put a couple flashlights in our coats. Then we ran downstairs and out the front door. Man, we've got to be the first ones to see this. We're going to be well known. I yelled with joy. As fast as we could, we ran. Why? We didn't just grab our bikes. I think it was just because she was excited. We ran in the direction through the woods. I was there when it happened. We went a long way into those woods. Back there are miles and miles of forest, so this thing could be anywhere. We looked for about 15 minutes before we saw this bright light through some trees far away. The light was very bright and flickered like a strobe light. To give you a better idea, it looked like it was calling us to come closer, so we moved carefully but didn't stop or turn away. Then I heard a voice that was as clear as day, but it sounded like it was in my head and not out loud for everyone to hear. Then it told me, "Youngling, come closer, I won't hurt you." "What did you hear?" I asked Junior. "Find out here what's coming up. Be quiet," he talked back. I felt like I should stop, so I did. Junior kept moving toward him. I tried to tell him to stop, but he couldn't hear me over the loud noise coming from the woods, where this bright light was shining over the trees and hill. Now, he was over the hill and in the light, so I couldn't see him anymore. I knew something was very wrong because I had a bad feeling about it. I couldn't stay. I have to go get Junior. We both have to leave. I slowly started walking toward the light. As I got closer, it got louder, so I had to stop and take a break. I was going crazy. No lie? I kept going after that. Step by step. I moved toward the light. I walked into the light once I got to it. Almost like putting up a smoke screen. I could see the alien starship about 20 yards ahead of me once I stepped through it. Whoa. I wondered, where was Junior? I thought he couldn't be found anywhere. Not only did the cold winter wind give me goosebumps, but I was also scared of what I had found. Then? What happened to my friend? I kept getting closer and closer to the thing. There were flashing red and green lights in the middle of the ship, just like on the wings of our planes. I looked down at the ground near the ship and saw my friend face down and naked in the dirt. He was dead. His whole body had been burned to a crisp by high temperatures. Non-imaginable. No, I yelled, Junior. His body gave off smoke, which meant that it had just happened. But how? Who did it? I finally saw the alien. It was standing under the ship and had some kind of big gun, which I think was a flamethrower or something. God, it looked bad. That thing looked terrible. It was thin, had dark grey skin, and big, black eyes. That was all. Nothing to wear, nothing. I didn't pay attention to how many fingers or toes there were. I had to get out of there as soon as possible before I turned into barbecue, too. Get close. I thought about it again as I turned around and ran as fast as I could in the other direction. I'm pretty sure that gun isn't light, so I hoped it wouldn't be able to follow me on foot. I was right, though. After about 15 minutes of running like hell through the woods, I got back home. If I had gotten lost on the way back, I wouldn't be here to tell you this story. I was about 14 or 15 years old in 2004 or 2005. I grew up in the country in Southwest Virginia. I was a typical country boy. My parents recently let me start hunting raccoons on my own, which is what I was doing that night. As the sun was going down, I took the dogs and walked about 2 miles to where we hunted. Just like I did before. When I got to the usual place, I let the dogs out and waited. Nothing out of the ordinary happened for a few minutes, and after about half an hour, nothing had changed. We didn't have the best hounds, so if they didn't find a raccoon scent, they would find a deer, a rabbit, or something else. But that didn't happen. I started walking around and calling for them, but they didn't answer. Then I saw a red light coming from the top of the ridge line in the hauler. Now, this place is a long way from any roads. It's just a forest and a cow pasture, and there's no electricity anywhere nearby. My first thought was that the farmer was burning some brush to clear it away. So I went to find out what was going on and make sure no one was trying to start a fire. I felt like something was wrong as I got closer to the top of the ridge. I started to notice that there wasn't any smoke in the air and that the light wasn't flickering like a fire's flames would. But the color was what was really wrong with it. It wasn't the warm, orange-red light of a fire, it was a bright, intense red. The best way I can describe it is like how a stoplight on a dark corner gives everything a spooky red glow, or how brake lights might do the same thing. That was the color. If I had been able to see it, it would have taken maybe 54 lines of 4 cars with their brakes on. It's possible that there was a party in the field, but I didn't hear any music or noise. I was looking at it and trying to figure out what it was, but I couldn't. When this happened, I got really scared. I had a single-shot 20-gauge gun with birdshot in it. I also had a few shells, buckshots, and slugs with me. I quickly loaded a slug gun and grabbed some $2 hot shells, so I could defend myself. I turned around and took the long way home as quietly and sneakily as I could. When I got home, I told my mom and stepdad everything that had happened. My stepfather yelled at me because I left the dogs in the woods. He thought I ran away because I was scared or because I was too lazy to go after them. He just didn't believe me. The dogs knew how to get back home and were waiting in their doghouse for breakfast the next morning, just an FYI. A day or two later, I went back to the hauler during the day to look for proof of what I had seen. I looked hard, but I didn't find any evidence of a fire, any flesh, tire tracks, or anything else out of the ordinary. About a week after this happened to me, I woke up one night and walked into the living room. My stepdad jumped up and told me that he had seen that red light he had been looking for, though not in the same place. He was standing in the dark with his light off when he saw 3 bright flashes of light that made enough light for him to read a newspaper. We never saw those red lights again after that. Part of me wishes I had gone the extra 25 yards to see what was on the other side of the ridge. Part of me is glad I didn't see it. Has anyone else heard or seen a bright red light like this in the woods? In the comments below, please tell me all about it. So, when I was younger, I used to play shows all over the US from a van. This story takes place in 2007 as I was driving through the desert in New Mexico late at night to get from one show to the next. I was the driver's co-pilot, and at least 3 other people in the back were all awake. We were just hanging out and talking when we saw what looked like a car going under an overpass about a mile ahead of us. But it looked strange, and I think we all knew there wasn't an overpass where we were, way out in the middle of nowhere. The car then went straight up in the air in a motion that looked almost like a vert ramp. Someone on a skateboard could ride on it, but it went hundreds of feet into the air. Then it kind of did a barrel roll, which is when we realized it wasn't just 2 headlights or the shape of a car but 3 lights. We first thought that the lights were about a mile ahead of us and moving in a giant U shape right in front of us, doing barrel rolls and then turning around and doing the same thing over and over again. Everyone in the van is freaking out, and it goes without saying that one person woke up and was scared as hell. He had no idea what to say. I think he just said, "What the hell?" This happened over and over again for what seemed like about 5 minutes, but it was definitely longer than a minute. This thing put on a show until it seemed to go higher than usual, went above us, and merged into a single light that we could no longer see. But the side mirrors let me and the driver see it. We didn't see it in the center mirror because we had a trailer, but it was behind us at the same distance as it was in front of us. It was right in the middle behind us and low to the ground, so it almost looked like a motorcycle on the highway. Eventually, it just faded away and disappeared. This was the first time I saw a light, but it won't be the last. This made me more sure that there is something out there, and since then I haven't really looked back. Does anyone else have stories like mine? If so, please tell me. So, about 12 years ago, about 7 of my friends and I went camping. Around 2 a.m., we were all sitting in a field drinking. I saw something coming toward us when we were in the field. It was a big rectangle that moved as slowly as a sloth. In the end, it went up above us. It was about the size of 3/4 of a football field and completely square. I'm 98% sure it was grey, but it was also 2 in the morning. So, I'm not sure. Of course, right now I'm thinking that I'm completely drunk, and that this isn't happening. But when I look up at this huge rectangle machine, I can see at the bottom what look like plain doors. Well, there were a lot of them and a few blue lights, as far as I can remember. It was above us for about 2 minutes, and then it was gone as quickly as a snap of the fingers. At this point, I thought I was drunk and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, there were 4 of us awake, so I asked one of them if anything had happened the night before. He told me exactly what I was thinking, and the other 3 didn't say anything about it. We never talked about what happened again, but it's always on my mind. What the heck was I thinking? I just thought I'd say it here. I wanted to know if anyone else had experienced the same thing. They have to agree that it's pretty neat. I didn't feel afraid. I couldn't believe what the hell was going on more than anything else. Also, it sounded a little bit like a vacuum cleaner. Strange, right? But I couldn't think of anything else that sounded the same when I was a teenager. My friends used to mess around with motorbikes and take them to this private road. On foot, the fastest way to get to this road was to go through this field, and through this tiny tunnel that almost no one used. In that field, there was a horse. I used to stroke all the time while watching my friends drive by on their motorcycles. One day, we tried to go back down, but it was blocked by tents and men in black suits, possibly MI5 or MIB, and they wouldn't even let us look closer that same night. Some people who use the road for work deliveries say they saw a huge bright light, and one of the truckers told the police about it the same night, around 5 a.m. People were banging on his door, and he was taken away in a van or truck, questioned, and then stripped. He said that when the money was taken out of his pocket, it was all stuck together, as if it had been magnetized. After that, they threatened him, saying that if he told anyone, he would get into a lot of trouble, and made him sign some papers. It wasn't until 15 years later that this whole story came out. Back to the part about the horse, a dog walker in the area found that horse cut up in the same field. There you'll find the MI came in and tied up all the loose ends. He said that it was cut so neatly that it looked like it was done with a laser, and the organs were also taken out very neatly. So it's strange to think that the same horse I used to pet when I was a teenager was cut up by aliens. We are definitely not alone. As a reporter for the news station, it's my job to write about the raid at Area 51 today. I'm not going to say which station I work for or who I am, or else I'd just use Twitter to tell everyone myself. When I got this job, I wasn't too happy about it, to be honest. Who wants to be sent out into the middle of the desert at 3 a.m. to report on some internet joke? I really didn't think that many people would come. I thought it would just be me, maybe a few other reporters, and 5 weirdos standing around in the open desert looking dumb. I'll own up to being wrong. I didn't think there would be this many people here. But the fact that anyone is here is more than I expected. There aren't a lot of them? My producers had hoped for more people to watch, but there are only a few, maybe a little over 100 people if you don't count the press and some police. Most of them are in their own groups, which are spread out around the area. But there are people here. At least I can talk to a few people and get some pictures with my camera before lunch. Let me describe where we are right now. In the middle of the desert, you drive on a long 2-lane road before turning left onto another road that takes you farther and farther into the desert and away from people. After driving this road for another hour, you turn right and go about a mile. That's where your meeting place is. The meeting place is mostly just a place. They got off the road, and into the sand, and this is what they decided was the main point. When we got there, most of the people who were planning to go on the raid were already there, along with a few news stations and press. As the morning went on, more reporters and 4 more cars of people who wanted to join the raid showed up. Then I noticed something strange. There were about 20 vehicles for the press, but only 10 for other people. At least 100 people had to be out here ready to storm Area 51, but the cars that had already arrived only had about 2 people in them, so only 6 cars could have brought that many people. Even though I was never good at math when I was younger, I could see that there were more people here than the cars could hold. Some of the people may have been dropped off by a bus, and we'll come back to get them later. But would a bus company really take this many people to the middle of nowhere and leave them there? I thought I'd ask around. I knew that some of the other journalists were just doing their normal jobs on some of the stories. We are all pretty friendly, even though we are all pretty competitive in this small town. People who had been there before me told me that most of the people who were going to storm in were already here when we got there. No one could explain how these people got here. That's odd. Not impossible, but just odd. After talking with the others, we all agree that we just wanted to get the story and go home before the sun came out and the temperature went up, turning this place into a living hell. I knew before I did this that the people I was going to meet today wouldn't be typical. Normal people wouldn't believe in aliens. Normal people don't take internet jokes seriously enough to show up in strange places. Normal people don't plan to attack a military base with top secret information. In September, normal people don't go to the middle of a desert. When I came here, I knew I would be walking into a storm of crazy conspiracy theorists who almost certainly have mental health problems. Some of the people here are strange. I don't mean the crazy tinfoil hat you might be thinking of, which is kind of weird. I mean, some of these people just don't seem right. I went up to a group of stormers and asked if I could talk to them. A few of them looked at each other with confused, almost worried faces before whispering something. One person finally gave in and asked, "What's your name and where are you from?" I asked my name. Theodore lives in the state you call Washington, and I live in the state you call Idaho. He said, "Idaho, how did you get here? Did you fly drive? When did you get in? We drove here this morning and were the first ones there. What do you want to do? You don't have much with you? Did you pack enough food and water to stay alive? How much time do you think it will take? Food and water. It shouldn't take very long. That's it. It was my very first interview. That's what I meant when I said strange. Who calls cars automobiles? The name sounded fake, but everyone gives us fake names, so that's not too surprising. The next person I talked to seemed more typical. I'm Alex from Vegas, he said, smiling. I just wanted to find out what would happen if anyone showed up. Can you believe how many people are here? This is crazy, because Alex seemed fine. I asked him how he got here, and he said he drove. When I said it was strange that there were so few cars for so many people, he said that they were all here when I got here. So who can say? Maybe all of them are the aliens that everyone is looking for. Maybe Alex is one of them. I told the camera that at least Alex seemed to be there just to make people laugh. The last person who would talk to me was a girl who said her name was J. Frank again. What is it with these famous fake names that include an initial? This has never happened to me in all the years I've been a reporter, but I guess today is the day I would expect it to. What would you like to do today? I asked, are we going to save the people who are being held there? She said, the aliens. Yes, that's what you call them. Okay. If you can get to Area 51 and free the aliens you think are there, then where should we take them? She said, home to your house. And looked at me like I was crazy. We were about to leave, so I couldn't answer any more questions. I looked up and saw that she was right. The biggest group had already started to get their things together and was heading out into the open desert. Some of them only had a small backpack, but most of the group left in the desert with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. A few people may have had water in their packs, but I didn't see anyone else with water. We took out the camera and filmed them leaving like nothing was wrong. Not everyone went. Alex was one of about 20 people who stayed behind and hung out while we watched them leave. People eventually began to leave. The group had gone so far away that there was no place to stay. At first, Alex's small group and some reporters decided to go. Others caught up quickly, but I stayed where I was. I was left alone with the police. All of the press cars had left, and all 10 cars had also left. When everyone left, not a single vehicle was left behind. It was probably smart of them to do that, since the heat would put them in jail or kill them later today. Anyway, I talked to my cameraman and asked him what he wanted to do. We could leave like everyone else, or we could drive our truck after the stormers for a while and see what happens. The news is about us. So it's up to us. We decided that we were being followed a little bit and decided to stay far enough behind to just watch. Some of them might die out there in the heat, and they can't call for help on their cell phones because they don't work. We at least have a car, some water, and a satellite connection in case we need them. We drove through the desert, and I was surprised that the group had gone much farther than I thought they would, and that they had done it quickly, maybe too quickly. We were driving, and it took us almost an hour to catch up to them. On this terrain, we weren't going fast, but we weren't going slow either. This big group of people can't walk that quickly in these conditions. We slowed down and moved to the side to stay away from the group. We didn't want to be with them, we just wanted to watch them. As they walked through the heat, they still cared only about the clothes on their backs, and there was no water in sight. Even though I'm in a van with air conditioning, I'm hot and thirsty. I just can't picture myself out there with them. We didn't realize that the military area with the fence and the gate was so close. It probably wasn't more than 10 miles from where everyone was meeting. As the storm got closer, everyone could see that the military had put guards at the gate and behind it. As the two sides stared each other down, the stormers stopped in front of the gate. It looked like some of the stormers walked up to the fence and were talking to the military. We couldn't hear what was being said because we were too far away. We couldn't do anything but watch, so my partner took out his camera and zoomed in to get a better look. I could look down to see the monitor, but I found it more interesting to watch the whole group. The stormers' leaders went back to the rest of the group, and it looked like they were talking about what to do next. When I looked at the monitor, I saw that the military had started to line up behind the gate with their guns, making sure that no one tried to rush the gate at the moment. Everything was calm, but a little tense. I turned to the cameraman and told him how I pray. We don't have to watch these civilians get killed, that's true. They could have been strange. He agreed that they didn't deserve to be killed out here, but he added, let's hope that if anything does happen, some people will just end up in jail. Then it began. The stormers' leaders started to move toward the gate, and the rest of the group quickly followed. They weren't running and trying to get to the gate as quickly as possible. Instead, they were just walking calmly toward the gate. On the monitor, I could see that the guards at the gate had their guns out and were yelling at people to stop or they would shoot. The guard's face showed he was scared. It wasn't a scared face, but one that didn't want to have to kill someone who wouldn't listen. I cared very much about the soldiers. They didn't want to shoot at civilians, but they had to because the stormers didn't listen to their orders. I never would have chosen to be in that situation. Maybe that's why I've never wanted to join the military in the slightest. The guards kept yelling at the stormers, who were moving quickly toward the gate, to stop. When they got close to the gate, the guards stepped back. They wouldn't shoot until they went through the gate. When one of the soldiers fired a shot, it sounded like a crack in the air, but no one fell. The warning shot didn't stop the stormers, though. The first stormer got to the gate and started to climb. The soldiers on the other side kept shouting, and the monitor showed what they were saying. You could hear them yelling, "Stop or we'll shoot." But the stormers didn't care. It didn't bother them. They climbed over the fence and barbed wire as if it wasn't there. While some people climbed over the gate, the soldiers moved back and raised their guns. The first people over the gate moved toward the soldiers, but then shots rang out and some of the stormers fell down. I just can't believe what I saw. Are you getting this, Mike? I asked. As the stormers keep climbing the fence in the hot desert air, he was recording more gunshots. Some of the buildings looked like the soldiers were taking cover behind them. I stood still and watched as the stormers kept climbing over the fence and into the military complex. I looked at the stormers who had been the first to attack the gate and were now dead on the ground. What were they thinking? Why did the other one not stop? This will be a massacre and a black mark on the history of the United States. The day the military killed more than 100 civilians while trying to find out if there were aliens at the base. As they moved forward, more shots hit them and knocked them down one by one. Then something else took place. People who had been shot and fallen to the ground started to get up and move forward. More shots went off and more people fell, but the stormers got back up just as quickly. What the heck was happening? Attacks are going on in Area 51. The soldiers moved further back into the base, and the last of the stormers could be seen crossing the fence in the distance. I could see in the sky that something was coming. In front of the soldiers. Attack helicopters did it. I didn't know whether to be happy that help was coming or scared of what was about to happen to those stormers on the ground. The helicopters started shooting, but not at the stormers on the ground. They were shooting up at something. I looked up to see where they were aiming their guns. But the sky above was empty. I heard a loud bang when a jet broke the speed of sound, which is called a sonic boom. Even though I couldn't see them or what they were fighting against, I know they were there. We were under attack. I turned to the cameraman, Mike, and told him that we had had enough and needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Before I could even fasten my seat belt, he was already in the driver's seat and speeding away. You got it just fine? I asked if we were going to tell the biggest story ever. We'll be well known for this, you know. Yeah, I got it. He couldn't say anything else. We were both still in shock. We got back to the original gathering place and there were military police waiting for us. Shit. I said that I knew what would happen next. No way were they going to let us leave with the footage. We tried to lie and say we hadn't filmed anything, but they were too smart for that. They went through everything in our truck and found it all. They took everything. They didn't even let us keep the interviews we did earlier. We got nothing, then. We're finally getting back to a place with cell phone service. I can't tell the whole world or even the news stations about this, but I can tell them here, and they'll know. But if I don't have any of the video, I'll just look like one of those crazy conspiracy theorists I talked to earlier. Update. Wait a minute. It's Saturday. That can't be true. We were gone for maybe 2 hours, until they got to the gates, and then we went back. What the heck happened to the rest of Friday? What does it mean to attack Area 51?